Okay, so I've just drawn the walls for this hotel floor plan that you need to draw as well. And so I might just show you the completed floor plan. So don't think that you need to draw 2 floor plans here for a start. If you're still working on this one, you only need to draw one, and then you can either copy it, or you can actually get both of these drawings from one floor plan using layers. You can turn different combinations of layers on to get these 2 floor plans. We'll go further with that next week anyway, but what I want to go through now is how to draw these windows. So start with the walls, and I will just delete these doors so that you can see what it looks like before you even have the doors in there. So it should look like that. And that's always a good way of drawing a floor plan. Draw the walls with the openings cut all the way through first before you put the components in, like the doors and windows, and you'll be much better off. You'll make much fewer mistakes, and it should be much clearer to you how all the walls are aligned with each other. I've cut them, so I'm just using the dimensions on the floor plan. You've got all the dimensions for those opening positions. So maybe those are a bit clearer. I'll bring the doors back, but then I'll show you maybe how I did the openings for these windows. So I'll remove all of those, and I'll put it back so that I don't have the openings at all for the windows. So I'll then, these are still polylines, so I've selected all of it by going right to left, so I get all of those lines, and then I'm going to explode them so that they're lines, and that'll make it a bit easier to work with as well. And then I'm going to draw a line. And I'm going to go from the corner here, I'm going to come across 1100 and then down to the outside, and I'm on a different layer, so I'll change to my wall layer, and I'll put that line onto the wall layer as well. And then I'll offset 1200, which is the size of the window opening, and then offset again 600 is the next one, and then offset again 1200 again. So the trick with offset, always put the distance in straight after clicking the offset button. You just got to force yourself to do it, or it won't work. Yep, yep. This button here is offset. No, you must be doing something different, but I'll come over and have a look in a second. You won't be able to keep up, but yeah, the idea here is that you just get the idea with the graphics, how things should look. And so I'm going to use trim now, and before I select anything, I'm going to press enter, and now I can cut the walls away. And this is really the part I want to emphasise, that you cut the walls. Don't try and leave the lines in, even though there will be a line there. It's really important that you cut that so that you can then draw new lines in. So at the moment I've left it, so I've just got a layer for my walls, but now I'm going to go back into my layer properties and make a new layer. It's getting a little bit more advanced. I'm going to call it A Wall Projection, or just PROJ for projection. And I'll make it a different colour. I'll make it a lighter red. So I know this might seem a bit more involved, but this is the way you're supposed to do drawings. And so then, or architectural drawings. So then now I'm going to set that line weight much lighter than the original wall layer. So I'll make that 0.2. And I'll make that the current layer. And then I'm going to go and draw new lines in connecting those corners. Okay, so notice how now that line already, if you're used to reading architectural graphics, that reads as being lower than this line because it's lighter. If you're not reading it that way, that's something you need to train your eyes and your brain to recognise, that heavy means in the foreground, light means in the background. So all of these lines here inside the opening are below the cut plane. So that means the wall either side of the opening is being cut, so this part and these parts either side, they're all being cut through at probably about 1,500 or 1.5 metres above the ground plane, and then the windowsill is below that. So what we're seeing there is the windowsill inside those openings. And then, I don't remember the size of the window frame you've been given. 50 mil is actually standard, but I know these are meant to be metal frame windows, so they've drawn them a bit smaller. Does anyone remember the size of the frame? I think it was about 35. Okay, so I'll make it 35, but if it is different in the notes, use a different size. I'm not really that worried about the size, the exact size used for the frame, because it's not a construction drawing. The window manufacturers are not going to build the window differently if you draw it differently. They build it in a factory. They know how to make windows. They know more than we do about it. So if you draw your window frame 50 mil and in real life it's 38 mil, they're going to make it 38 mil. So I'm going to say 35 mil is the size, and just because it's aluminium, I think, or some sort of metal frame. And then I'm going to offset, I'm just guessing 80 mil. So using offset, I'm going to make it 80 and then come down and then do that on both sides. And then I'll offset 70 mil from that line again. No, that looks too small. I'm just trying to scale it by eye off these drawings. That's too small. I'll tell you what, I'm just going to do it the size I would do it, which is 50. So I'm going to make this 100. So I know this doesn't seem the best, but just can't see all that clearly. So I know it's 270, going to come in, yeah, so let's say 100. So I'm going to offset 100 from both of those lines. Yep, that's right. Then I'm going to offset again 50, coming in from each end. And you might find you'll do this in a different order. The way you draw it doesn't really matter as long as you end up with the same thing. So I've got the lines in for my frame, or my window jamb, essentially. And now I'm going to make a layer for my windows, because I don't have one yet. So we'll call that A window. And then, because I know I'll need a projection layer for my windows as well, I'll make another layer called A window projection. And I don't know, when you were doing your hand drawing, this is something you're thinking about, how to get the different parts of the things you've been drawing broken up so that so they've got the right line weights? Oh, okay, yeah. So because you might be taught a bit differently. The way I was taught from first year really is that everything that's cut should be heavier, and things that are lighter, so things that aren't cut or below the cut plane should be lighter. Yeah. And so even in your first floor plan, you're going to have elements like that, like a window, which is going to have the different things. So, so I know I was definitely doing this, you know, from the very beginning. And so I'm going to make the window layer 0.35. And then window projection, I'll leave 0.2. And then the colours, if you want to follow mine, I'm using colour 160 for the window, and then for the window projection, I'm going to use 161. And then finally, I'll make one last layer for the glass. So I'm just going to call it A glaze, GLAZ, and I'll make that cyan. And another convention is that glass should be heavy. So 0.5. So I'm going to put all of those lines onto the window layer, a window. And then again trim. I'm going to cut all of these extra lines away. And again, you probably will do this a bit differently, but you just want to end up with window jambs either side, similar to the way you've drawn your doors maybe. And then we've got a sash, which is half that size. So I'll just draw a line from the corner across 50, so again half the size, 50, down 50, and then back to the left 50. And then I can, from the bottom right corner, do the same thing. Then, to get the centre point worked out, I might just draw a line just so it's clear from the midpoint here to the midpoint below. If you've been doing this or practicing a bit more, you might know there's a much quicker way of doing this, but again, just with that centre line, it's a lot easier to see, obviously, where the middle is. And then I'll offset again, this time 25. Half of that 50mm frame, either side. And again, you might work out a quicker way of doing it than this, but I'll just draw a line across now so that I can see where that intersects with my centre lines. And then I can just draw a rectangle from that intersection there. And we know it's 50 by 50. Okay, so I can copy that rectangle now. Down below. And then clear those construction lines so that it's easy to see what I'm looking at. And now I've just got to fill in the rest with those with lines on those other layers. So I'll draw some lines now connecting all of these corner points. And again, there's a much quicker way of doing it than this. I'm doing it the long way just so that you can see all the lines. And then on the glazing layer, draw lines for the glass. Okay, but can you see how much better that reads than what you've got on this floor plan? No, because these parts here have lighter line weights, and the only way you can achieve that is by having separate lines. You can't have different line weights for a single line. So that's really all I wanted to show you, that you can break these lines up, and usually the best way is to trim the openings first. And it's not only good drawing practice, it'll carry all the way through to construction stage. Because if you work out the opening sizes and get those right, then you're actually doing the construction, or you're setting out the construction in the right way. Where a lot of people make mistakes with construction is that they try to measure to parts of the window, so they measure to the frame, when really you don't ever need to give that dimension. Like I've been saying, they're going to make the windows in the factory the way they always make them. You don't need to dimension the parts of the window or the parts of your door either. So this is really a symbol. It's not meant to be a drawing of the actual window. If you want to, you can draw that in if you go and get the product details from the manufacturers, but you'll find that they're a lot more complicated than what's drawn here. And there's no real need for that. This is a symbol that everyone recognises as a window, a sliding window. And so now I can simply copy this across, and it's the same on the other side. So it's not a bad idea. If you have a go at drawing the windows like that, it'll help you a lot. If you go and work in an architectural or an interior design firm, that's how they'll expect you to draw them. And you can just carry that through to all of your drawing work, whether it's a plan or a section as well. Drawing a cross section, you follow exactly the same rules.